The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a pale blue world called Viridian Prime. Inside, creatures from 100 different worlds gathered in fear. Some had scales, others had crystals for skin, and a few looked like floating clouds of light. But all of them shared the same expression of terror. Thelmar stood at the center of the chamber. His body was made of living crystal that glowed with soft purple light. He was old, very old, and he had seen many things in his 300 years of life. But he had never seen the Council this afraid. "They have taken another system," Thelmar said. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "The Helvor system fell yesterday. 4 billion souls, all gone or enslaved." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the chaos. Vexthor rose from his seat. He was an insectoid creature, tall and thin, with 6 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light like black mirrors. "We must negotiate," he said. "The Krethiks can be reasoned with. Every species can be reasoned with." "They are parasites," another voice called out. "They do not negotiate. They consume." Thelmar raised one crystalline hand and the chamber fell silent. "We have tried diplomacy. We have tried economic sanctions. We have tried defensive barriers. Nothing works. The Krethiks hive grows stronger with each world they take. In 3 months, they have conquered 12 systems, 12. At this rate, they will reach the core worlds within a year." A small, furry creature named Palax spoke up. Her species was known for their peaceful nature and advanced mathematics. "What can we do? Our defense forces are scattered. Our weapons are designed for peacekeeping, not war. We are not warriors." The word hung in the air like a curse. Warriors. The Council had spent 10,000 years building a civilization based on peace and cooperation. They had ended wars, eliminated poverty, and created a galaxy where species could thrive together. But now, they faced something they had never prepared for. An enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be bought, and could not be stopped by peaceful means. Thelmar took a deep breath. What he was about to say would change everything. "There is one option we have not considered. One species that might be able to help us." The chamber went quiet. Everyone knew what he was going to say. "No," Vexthor said immediately. "Absolutely not. You cannot be serious." "The humans," Thelmar said simply. Chaos erupted again. Half the chamber shouted in agreement, the other half in horror. Thelmar waited for the noise to die down. "They are Deathworlders," Vexthor said, his voice sharp with disgust. "They evolved on a Class 12 hazard planet. Do you understand what that means? Their world tries to kill them every single day. They have poisonous creatures, deadly weather, diseases that would wipe out entire populations of our species. And they thrived there. They became the dominant species on a planet that should have destroyed them. Which is exactly why they might be able to stop the Krethiks." Thelmar replied calmly. "We isolated them for a reason," another representative said. "When we made first contact 50 years ago, we learned what they were capable of. Their history is filled with war. They have weapons that can destroy entire planets. They think nothing of violence. They are dangerous." "More dangerous than the Krethiks?" Thelmar asked. "More dangerous than extinction?" Palax spoke softly. "I have read about Earth. Their gravity is twice what most of us can survive. Their atmosphere would burn our lungs. Their bacteria would kill us in hours without protection. The humans who evolved there are incredibly strong and resilient. But they are also unpredictable. What if we invite them to help, and they decide they like conquering as much as the Krethiks do?" Thelmar nodded. "It is a risk. I will not lie about that. But consider our options. We can wait for the Krethiks to destroy us, or we can ask for help from the one species that might actually be able to fight them. They will want something in return," Vexthor said. "Deathworlders always do." "Then we negotiate," Thelmar said. "But first we must ask." The debate went on for hours. Representatives argued, pleaded, and threatened. Some demanded that they fight alone, even if it meant certain death. Others insisted that humanity was their only hope. The chamber divided into factions, old alliances crumbling under the weight of fear. Finally, after 8 hours of discussion, Thelmar called for a vote. "All those in favor of sending a distress call to Earth, signal now." Lights appeared throughout the chamber. Thelmar counted them carefully. When he finished, he looked tired and sad. "The motion passes. Barely. We will send the message." Bexthor stood up and walked out of the chamber without another word. Several other representatives followed him. Thelmar turned to a small corner of the chamber where a single human sat. She had been quiet throughout the entire debate, watching and listening. Her name was Yunseo, and she was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. She had held this position for 5 years, and in that time, she had been mostly ignored. The Council did not trust humans, did not want them involved in galactic affairs. They tolerated Earth's presence but kept them at a distance. Yunseo stood up. She was not particularly tall or strong-looking compared to some of the aliens in the room. But there was something in her eyes that made others uncomfortable. A coldness. A calculation. The look of someone who had learned to expect betrayal. Ambassador Yunseo, Thelmar said formally, the Galactic Council requests the assistance of Earth in dealing with the Krithix threat. Will you transmit our request to your homeworld? Yunseo looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked around the chamber at all the species who had spent 50 years treating humanity like dangerous animals that needed to be caged. She thought about all the trade agreements denied, all the diplomatic insults, all the times Earth had offered help and been rejected. I will send your message, she said quietly. Her voice was calm and professional, but there was an edge to it. But I will include a note. I will tell them this decision was barely approved. I will tell them that half of you would rather die than ask for our help. And I will tell them that Earth is under no obligation to respond. She turned and walked toward the exit. As she reached the door, she looked back. You spent 50 years being afraid of what we might do. Now you'll find out if we're as dangerous as you feared, or if we're better than you deserve. Then she was gone, leaving the chamber in uncomfortable silence. Thelmar sat down slowly. He had just made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. He only hoped it was the right one. In a small office nearby, Yunseo sat at her desk and composed the message. She kept it simple and factual. She described the Krithix threat, the Council's failures, and their desperate request for help. Then she added her own recommendation in a single word. Unanimous decision required. She knew what that meant. Earth's government would see that the Council was divided, that many species still hated and feared humanity. They would know this was not a genuine alliance but desperation, and they would have to decide if that was enough. She pressed the send button and leaned back in her chair. The message would reach Earth in 6 hours. Then they would see what humanity was really made of. Outside the window, stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Krithix hive was spreading like a plague, consuming everything in its path. And somewhere else, Earth was about to receive a message that would test everything humanity claimed to be. Yunseo closed her eyes and waited. The war room was deep underground, buried beneath 3 kilometers of rock and steel in what used to be called Geneva. Now it was just the Central Arcology, home to 50 million people and the headquarters of United Earth Command. Admiral Hunsol stood at the head of a long table, staring at the holographic display that floated in the air before him. The message from Ambassador Yunseo had arrived 6 hours ago. Since then, Hunsol had read it 47 times. He had memorized every word, every implication, every subtle warning she had embedded in the text. They're desperate, said Captain Dalyun. She sat to Hansol's left, her hands folded on the table. She was young for a captain, only 32, but she had earned her rank leading special operations teams in the Belt Wars. The Krithix have them terrified. They should be terrified, General Taeyang said from across the table. He was older, maybe 60. With gray hair and scars that told stories of a violent youth. I've reviewed the intelligence reports. The Krithix are parasites. They infest host bodies, take over neural systems, and use the victims as biological weapons. They're efficient, ruthless, and they're multiplying fast. Hansol nodded slowly. He was 55 years old and had served in Earth's Navy for 37 years. He had fought pirates, criminals, and rebellious colonists, but he had never fought a war like this. None of them had. The question is whether we should help them, Taeyang continued. The Council isolated us for 50 years. They treated us like we were dangerous animals. They denied us trade routes, blocked our colonization requests, and spread propaganda about how violent and unpredictable we were. Now they come begging for help? They didn't come begging, said Jiwoo quietly. She was the youngest person at the table, only 28, but she was the best intelligence analyst in the fleet. Yunseo's note was clear. The vote was close. Half the Council still hates us. They're only asking because they're out of options. Which means they'll throw us away the moment the threat is gone, Tae-Yang said. We save them and then what? They'll go back to isolating us. Or worse, they'll see our military capabilities and become even more afraid. They might try to restrict us further, Daon leaned forward. Does that matter? There are billions of innocent people dying out there. Species that never did anything to us, children, families. Do we let them die because their government treated us badly? It's not about revenge, Tae-Yang said. It's about strategy. If we commit our forces to this fight, we leave Earth vulnerable. We expose our technology and tactics. And for what? So the Council can fear us even more? Han Sol raised his hand and everyone fell silent. He had been listening carefully to all of them. Each made valid points, but the decision was his to make, and he had been thinking about it since the moment the message arrived. Jiwoo, he said, what's your analysis of the Krithix expansion patterns? Jiwoo brought up a new holographic display. Red dots spread across a map of the galaxy like a disease. They're moving in a spiral pattern, consuming resources and population centers. Based on their current trajectory, they'll reach the outer colonies in 18 months. They'll reach Earth in 3 to 5 years. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the map. So this isn't about helping the Council, Han Sol said. This is about stopping a threat before it reaches our doorstep. The Krithix won't stop with Council space. They'll keep expanding until someone stops them. Or until they reach Earth and find out we're harder to kill than they expected. Tae-Yang said with a grim smile. Maybe, Han Sol said. But by then they'll have consumed hundreds of worlds. They'll be stronger, more numerous and more difficult to stop. Better to fight them now while they're still manageable. So we're doing this? Daeun asked. There was hope in her voice. Han Sol looked around the table. I want opinions. But first I want you to set aside politics. Set aside our grudges against the Council. I want to know, can we make a difference? Can we actually stop the Krithix? Tae-Yang pulled up tactical data. The Krithix fight with biological weapons. Living ships, swarm tactics. They overwhelm enemies with numbers. But they're not particularly advanced technologically. Their ships are fast but fragile. Their weapons are short-range. If we can engage them at distance, we have the advantage. What about ground combat? Han Sol asked. That's where it gets interesting, Tae-Yang said. Krithix warriors are tough, but they're adapted for low-gravity environments. Earth standard gravity would slow them down. Our soldiers train in 1G. We're stronger, faster, and more resilient in combat conditions. And we have experience with close-quarters fighting. The Council species don't. Most of them have never seen real war. So we have advantages, Daeun said. We're not just throwing our people into a meat grinder. We can actually win this, Jiwoo spoke up again. There's another factor, psychological. The Krithix have never faced serious resistance. They've been fighting species that are peaceful, that hesitate, that try to negotiate. They've never fought anyone who hits back harder. If we can break their momentum, we might create a cascade effect. Other species might find the courage to resist. Han Sol walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of the arcology stretching into the distance. 50 million people living their lives, unaware that a decision made in this room might determine whether they lived or died in a few years. We're Deathworlders, he said quietly. That's what they call us. It's meant to be an insult, a warning. They look at Earth and see a nightmare planet that should have killed us. They look at our history and see nothing but war and violence. He turned back to face the table. But that's not all we are. Yes, we evolved in harsh conditions. Yes, we know how to fight. But we also know how to survive. How to adapt. How to protect what matters. And right now what matters is stopping the Krithix before they consume everything. So we go? Daeun asked. We go, Han Sol confirmed. But not as the Council's servants. We go as Earth's representatives. We fight this war on our terms. We save lives because that's who we choose to be, not because anyone commanded us to. Tae-Yang nodded slowly. All right. If we're doing this, we do it properly. I'll need authorization to mobilize the 4th Fleet. 200 warships, 50,000 Marines, full support vessels. Granted, Han Sol said. Daeun, I want your special operations teams ready for deployment. We don't know what we'll find out there, and I need people who can adapt quickly. Yes, sir, Daeun said, already making notes on her datapad. Jiwoo, coordinate with intelligence services. I want everything we can get on Krithix tactics, biology, and weaknesses. Talk to xenobiologists, military historians, anyone who might have useful insights. On it, Jiwoo said. Han Sol looked at all of them. This is going to change everything. Once we commit to this, there's no going back. The Council will see what we're capable of. Some will be grateful. Others will be more afraid than ever. We need to be prepared for both reactions. What about Ambassador Yunseo? Daeun asked. Does she know we're coming? I'll send her a message personally, Han Sol said. She deserves to know before anyone else. The meeting continued for another 3 hours. They discussed logistics, supply chains, communication protocols, and contingency plans. By the time they finished, the sun was rising over Geneva, casting long shadows across the arcology. Han Sol returned to his office alone. He composed a message to Yunseo. It was short and simple. 4th Fleet deploying in 48 hours. We're coming. Not for them. For the principle. Humanity chooses its own path. He sent the message and then activated the fleet-wide communication system. All across Earth, on space stations, moon bases, and colonial outposts, his message would be received by every ship captain, every Marine, every crew member of the 4th Fleet. This is Admiral Han Sol. I'm ordering the immediate mobilization of the 4th Fleet. Our destination is Council space. Our mission is to stop the Krithix Hive from destroying billions of innocent lives. This will not be easy. We will face an enemy unlike anything we've fought before. We will operate far from home in hostile space with limited support. Some of us will not come back. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But we are going anyway. Because 50 years ago, the rest of the galaxy looked at Earth and saw monsters. They saw our violent history and our harsh world, and they decided we were too dangerous to be trusted. They were wrong. We are not monsters. We are survivors. We are protectors. And when someone calls for help, we answer. Not because we have to, because we choose to. That's what makes us human. Another pause. Prepare for deployment. We leave in 48 hours. Han Sol out. He closed the communication channel and sat back in his chair. Through his window, he could see the orbital dockyards where ships were already beginning to move. The 4th Fleet was awakening, preparing for war. Somewhere far away, Ambassador Yunseo would receive his message. Somewhere even farther, the Krithix continued their expansion, unaware that they had just awakened something they did not understand. And somewhere in between, the Galactic Council waited nervously, wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. Han Sol smiled grimly. They were all about to find out what Deathworlders could really do. Ambassador Yunseo walked through the corridors of Viridian Prime with steady steps. Her security detail, 2 human Marines in light armor, followed at a respectful distance. She could feel the eyes of other species on her as she passed. Some looked at her with gratitude. Others with fear, most with confusion. 3 days had passed since the Battle of Kelran. News had spread through Council space faster than anyone expected. Combat footage had leaked somehow, probably through Kelronian survivors who wanted the galaxy to know what had happened. Now everyone had seen what human warfare looked like. The videos were brutal. Ships exploding under railgun fire. Marines in powered armor tearing through Krithix warriors. The cold, methodical destruction of an enemy fleet that had seemed unstoppable just days before. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Yunseo reached the council chambers and paused at the entrance. Inside, she knew they were arguing about her people, about what the humans had done, about what it meant for the future. She straightened her uniform and walked in. The chamber fell silent as she entered. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to look at her. She walked calmly to the human delegation's seat and sat down, folding her hands on the desk in front of her. Thelmar stood at the center podium. His crystalline body looked dimmer than usual, as if the stress of recent events had drained his light. Ambassador Yunseo, he said formally, the Council has requested your presence to discuss the human fleet's actions in the Kelran system. I am here to answer questions, Yunseo said calmly. Vexthor rose from his seat, his insectoid body trembling with what might have been anger or fear. Your people destroyed 16 Krithix ships in 6 hours. 6 hours. Do you understand what that means? The Krithix have been unstoppable for 3 months. We lost entire defense fleets trying to slow them down, and your Admiral Han Sol eliminated them like they were nothing. Not nothing, Yunseo corrected gently. We took casualties. Several ships need extensive repairs, and we arrived too late to save millions of Kelronian lives. I would not call that nothing. But you won, another representative said. It was Palax, the small, furry mathematician. Her voice was quiet, almost fearful. You won easily. Your ships are more powerful than anything we've ever built. Your soldiers are stronger, faster, more resilient. And your tactics. She trailed off, shaking her head. Brutal. Vexthor finished. Your tactics are brutal. We've reviewed the combat footage. Your ships deliberately rammed Krithix vessels. Your Marines fought in vacuum without protective environments. You deployed weapons that we banned centuries ago because they were too cruel. Yunseo remained calm. She had expected this. We used the tools necessary to stop the Krithix. Would you prefer we had used less effective weapons and lost? We would prefer you had shown some restraint, Vexthor said. Some mercy. Some acknowledgement that even in war there are rules, lines that should not be crossed. The Krithix don't follow rules, Yunseo said. They infest living beings and turn them into weapons. They consume entire populations. They spread like a plague. And you want us to fight them with restraint? She leaned forward slightly. Let me be very clear. My people came here to stop the Krithix from killing billions. We did not come here to make you comfortable with how we fight. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted at each other, at Yunseo, at Thelmar. Some demanded that humanity be restricted, their weapons controlled. Others argued that humanity was their only hope of survival. The debate became heated, old tensions surfacing. Yunseo sat quietly and waited. She had learned patience during her 5 years as ambassador. She had learned to let them shout and argue, to let them exhaust themselves with words. Eventually, they would remember that words didn't stop the Krithix. Finally, Thelmar raised his hand for silence. Enough. We are not here to debate the morality of human warfare. We are here to decide what happens next. What happens next? Vexthor said sharply. I'll tell you what happens next. The humans have shown us their power. They have shown us that they can destroy fleets, occupy systems, and impose their will on anyone they choose. We asked for help, and now we may have invited a conqueror into our home. We are not conquerors, Yunseo said quietly, but her voice carried across the chamber. Admiral Hansol sent me his orders before the battle. Would you like to hear them? She didn't wait for permission. She pulled up a holographic display and played Hansol's message. His voice filled the chamber. We're coming. Not for them. For the principle. Humanity chooses its own path. What does that mean? Palax asked. It means we're not doing this because you ordered us to. Yunseo explained. We're doing this because we choose to, because it's the right thing to do. Because billions of innocent people are dying, and we have the power to stop it. That's the principle. We fight because we decide to, not because anyone commands us. And when the war is over, Vexthor demanded, when the Krithix are defeated, will you leave? Or will you decide that you should stay and protect us permanently? Will you decide that we need your guidance, your control, your empire? Yunseo looked at him steadily. What would you do in our position? 50 years ago, you met us for the first time. You saw Earth, a world that would kill most of your species within minutes. You saw our history, filled with conflict and struggle, and you were afraid. So you isolated us. You treated us like dangerous animals that needed to be caged. She stood up slowly. We could have been angry. We could have forced our way into the galactic community. We have the military strength to do it. But we didn't. We waited. We proved ourselves through actions, not threats. We built colonies, established trade, and showed that we could be peaceful when given the chance. And now you're showing us how violent you can be, Vexthor said. No, Yunseo said firmly. We're showing you how effective we can be. There's a difference. Violence without purpose is destruction. Violence with purpose is protection. We're not here to destroy. We're here to protect. But we will not apologize for being good at it. Thelmar spoke up. The question remains, what do we do now? The human fleet is continuing their campaign against the Krithix. Should we coordinate with them? Provide support? Or should we attempt to restrict their operations? Restrict us? Yunseo said, and there was a dangerous edge to her voice now. You couldn't restrict us before, when we were peaceful. What makes you think you can restrict us now when we're at war? The chamber went very quiet. The implication was clear and terrifying. If the Council tried to stop the human fleet, there might be a fight. And based on what they had seen at Kelran, the Council would lose that fight badly. This is exactly what we feared, Vexthor said quietly. You've become the very thing we were afraid of. A species so powerful, so dangerous that we cannot oppose you. Yunseo felt a flash of anger but controlled it. You're not listening. We don't want to oppose you. We don't want to control you. We want to stop the Krethiks and then go home. That's all. But you can't seem to accept that we might actually be the good people in this situation. Because you're Deathworlders, Palak said softly. Because everything about you is dangerous. Your world, your biology, your history. How can we trust that you'll stop being dangerous when the war is over? Yunseo took a deep breath. This was the heart of it. This was the fear that had defined human-council relations for 50 years. Not what humanity had done, but what they might do. Not their actions, but their potential. You want to know if you can trust us? Yunseo said. Let me tell you something about Earth. Yes, our world is harsh. Yes, our history has violence in it. But do you know what else our history has? Cooperation, art, science, philosophy. We didn't survive Earth by being the strongest or the most violent. We survived by working together, by building communities, by taking care of each other. She looked around the chamber. Every species here evolved on a world that was relatively safe. You didn't have to fight for every meal. You didn't have to worry about predators killing you in your sleep. You didn't have to survive ice ages and plagues and natural disasters that could wipe out entire civilizations. And because of that, you became peaceful. You became cooperative. You built this beautiful galactic civilization based on trust and mutual benefit. And you became warriors, Vexthor said. We became survivors, Yunseo corrected. And yes, part of survival is knowing how to fight, but it's also knowing when to fight and when to make peace. It's knowing the difference between an enemy and an ally. The Krethiks are enemies. They cannot be negotiated with. But you, she gestured around the chamber. You are not enemies. You're just scared. And I understand that. But your fear doesn't change who we are. There was a long silence. Then Thelmar spoke. What does Admiral Han Sol plan to do next? He plans to continue engaging Krethiks forces, Yunseo said. He will liberate occupied systems and push the hive back, and he will do this with or without council approval, because the alternative is letting billions die. And if we order him to stop? He won't, Yunseo said simply. Earth doesn't take orders from the council. We never did. That was part of the problem, wasn't it? You couldn't control us, so you isolated us instead. Vexthor stood up. I propose we take a vote. The human fleet has proven too dangerous to operate without oversight. We should demand they. The Kelran system had been beautiful once. 4 planets orbiting a yellow sun, 3 of them inhabited by the Kelronians. A peaceful amphibian species known throughout the galaxy for their poetry and music. They had lived in harmony with their environment for thousands of years, building cities that floated on vast oceans, creating art that moved people across 100 worlds. Now their cities were burning. Admiral Han Sol stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display with cold eyes. The flagship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long with armor plating that could withstand direct hits from most known weapons. It was painted dark gray, almost black, with no decorative elements. Unlike the sleek, elegant ships of other species, human vessels looked brutal and industrial. They were built for one purpose, war. Sensor report, Han Sol said quietly. Lieutenant Hyunwoo, the sensor officer, looked pale. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures in orbit around Kelran Prime. 16 Krethiks bioships. They're bombarding the surface. I'm reading millions of life signs terminating. Han Sol's jaw tightened. They had arrived too late to prevent the attack, but maybe not too late to save some lives. Communications, Open a channel to the Krethix fleet. Let them know we're here. Yes, sir, the communications officer said. A moment later, channel open. Hansol took a deep breath. Krethix vessels. This is Admiral Hansol of the United Earth Fleet. You are ordered to cease your attack immediately and withdraw from this system. You have 30 seconds to comply. There was a long silence. Then a response came through. Not in words, but in a series of clicking sounds that the translation system struggled to interpret. Finally, a synthetic voice spoke. Prey species, weak, surrender, join the hive. That's their standard response, Jiwoo said from her station. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They only understand dominance, Hansol nodded. He had expected this. All ships battle formation Delta. Load kinetic rounds. Prepare for engagement. Across the fleet, 200 warships moved into position. They were organized in tight formations, each group supporting the others, creating overlapping fields of fire. It was a formation designed for maximum efficiency and brutal effectiveness. Captain Da-Yun's voice came through on a private channel. Admiral, my strike teams are ready. Give us the word and we'll board those bioships. Stand by, Captain, Hansol said. Let's see how they respond to long-range fire first. The Krethix fleet was now turning to face the human vessels. The bioships were organic, grown rather than built. They looked like massive insects with segmented bodies and multiple appendages. They were fast and maneuverable, perfect for swarming tactics, and they outnumbered the human fleet 3-1. They're moving to attack formation, Hyunwoo reported. 16 targets now spreading out. They're trying to surround us. Expected, Hansol said. They always use swarm tactics. They've never faced an enemy that doesn't panic when surrounded. He raised his voice. All ships maintain formation. Do not break ranks. Fire on my command. The Krethix ships accelerated, moving with frightening speed. They were built for this, evolved for this. In previous battles, enemy fleets had scattered in panic when faced with this attack. The Krethix would overwhelm them, board their ships and infest the crews. But the human fleet didn't scatter. They held their formation, weapons tracking the approaching bioships with mechanical precision. Range 2,000 kilometers, Hyunwoo said. 1,500. 1,000. Fire, Hansol said calmly. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railguns fired magnetically accelerated slugs at hypersonic speeds. Missile launchers released swarms of guided warheads. Plasma cannons sent streams of superheated matter across the void. The Krethix had never faced weapons like these. Their bioships were designed to withstand the relatively weak energy weapons used by most Council species. They were not designed to stop solid metal traveling at thousands of meters per second. The first bioship simply exploded, torn apart by railgun fire. The second took 3 missiles directly to its central mass and broke in half. The third managed to deploy some kind of organic shielding, but the plasma fire burned through it in seconds. 7 targets destroyed, Hyunwoo reported, his voice filled with amazement. 9 remaining. They're retreating! No, they're not, Jiwoo said sharply. Look at their formation. They're regrouping. They're adapting. She was right. The surviving Krethix ships had pulled back and were now circling the human fleet at maximum range, looking for weaknesses. The hive mind was learning, calculating, trying to understand this new enemy. They're not used to losing, Hansol said, but they learn fast. Don't underestimate them. He activated fleet-wide communications. All ships prepare for close engagement. They'll try to board us next. That's their strength. Don't let them get close. The Krethix ships suddenly accelerated again, but this time they split up, coming from multiple directions at once. It was a smart tactic. They couldn't win at range, so they would try to get close where their biological weapons would be more effective. Evasive maneuvers, Hansol ordered. Fighter squadrons, deploy now. Launch bays across the fleet opened and hundreds of small fighters poured out. Unlike the capital ships, the fighters were fast and agile, designed for dogfighting. Their pilots were some of the best Earth had ever trained, people who grew up in high-gravity environments and could handle acceleration that would kill most alien species. The space battle became chaotic. Fighters swarmed around Krethix bioships, firing at weak points, drawing their attention. The capital ships continued their bombardment, focusing fire on targets that the fighters had damaged. One Krethix ship broke through the defensive screen and headed straight for the Indomitable. It was massive, easily 500 meters long, covered in organic armor that pulsed with sickly green light. Boarding craft launching from the target, Hyunwoo reported. 20, 30, 50 contacts. They're heading right for us. Point defense systems engage, Hansol said. And get me Captain Da-un. Da-un's face appeared on the screen. She was already in full combat armor, a massive suit of powered metal that made her look more like a tank than a person. Behind her, Hansol could see her team, all similarly equipped. Sir, she said, they're going to board us. I want your team ready to repel. Show them why you don't board a human ship. Da-un smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. With pleasure, sir. The boarding craft were small organic pods that flew like bullets toward the Indomitable. Point defense guns destroyed most of them, but a few got through, attaching themselves to the hull like parasites. Cutting tools began burning through the armor. Inside the ship, alarms blared. Crew members who weren't essential to ship operations grabbed weapons and headed to defensive positions. Every human on the ship had basic combat training. It was part of growing up on Earth, where survival meant knowing how to fight. The first boarding pod breached the hull in the lower cargo bay. Krithix warriors poured out, six-legged creatures with razor-sharp claws and mandibles that dripped with venom. They were fast and deadly, evolved to kill. They ran directly into Captain Da-un and her team. The battle was brutal and short. The Krithix warriors were dangerous, but they had evolved in low-gravity environments. Earth's standard gravity, which the ship maintained, slowed them down, and they had never faced anything like human-powered armor. Da-un's suit gave her the strength to tear through organic armor like paper. Her team moved with practiced coordination, covering each other, concentrating fire on individual targets. The Krithix tried to swarm them, but there wasn't enough space, and the humans had trained for exactly this scenario. Within 5 minutes, every Krithix warrior in the cargo bay was dead. Da-un stepped over their bodies and contacted the bridge. Cargo bay secure. No casualties. These things are tough, but they're not prepared for opponents who fight back this hard. Good work, Captain, Hansol said. Stand by for additional breaches, but there weren't any. Outside, the battle was turning decisively in humanity's favor. The Krithix bioships, designed to fight enemies who would panic and scatter, couldn't handle an opponent that stood firm and hit back harder. One by one, they were destroyed or driven off. 6 hours after the battle began, it was over. 16 Krithix bioships had entered the Kelran system. None of them left. The human fleet had taken damage, several ships needed repairs, and there had been casualties. But they had won decisively. Hansol looked at the tactical display. The Kelran system was secured, at least for now. On the planet below, millions of Kelronians had survived thanks to the fleet's intervention. It wasn't a complete victory. Millions more had died before the humans arrived, but it was something. Sir, the communications officer said, we're receiving a message from the planet. The Kelronian government wants to thank us. Tell them we're glad we could help, Hansol said. And tell them this isn't over. The Krithix will be back. They need to prepare. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krithix hive was learning about this defeat. They would adapt. They would come back stronger, but so would humanity. They always did. Hansol composed a message to the next Krithix-occupied system, the same message he would send to every hive fleet in the region. This is... The Hive Prime system hung in space like a diseased organ. 3 planets orbited a red dwarf star, and all 3 were covered in organic structures that pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. This was the heart of the Krithix expansion, the source of their endless swarms, the nest from which 1,000 bioships had launched to conquer the galaxy. Admiral Hansol stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and stared at the tactical display. Around his flagship, the entire 4th Fleet was assembled, 200 warships battered from weeks of continuous combat but still operational. They had fought their way through 15 Krithix-occupied systems to reach this point. Now they faced the ultimate target. Sensor readings, Hansol said quietly. Lieutenant Hyunwoo looked pale. Sir, I'm detecting over 3,000 bioships in the system. And that's just what we can see. There could be more hiding in the atmosphere or underground. 3,000 against 200. The worst odds they had faced yet. And the ground forces? Hansol asked. Tens of millions of Krithix warriors. The entire planet is one massive nest complex. Our intelligence suggests the Hive Queen is located somewhere in the equatorial region, deep underground. General Tae-yang stepped forward. He looked tired but determined. Sir, this is insane. Even if we win the space battle, we'll never be able to take that planet with 50,000 Marines. There are too many of them. I know, Han Sol said calmly. That's why we're not going to fight conventionally. He pulled up a new tactical display. Captain Da Yun, who had been listening quietly, leaned in to study it. Her eyes widened. Sir, is this what I think it is? Yeah, Han Sol said. We're going to kill the queen, cut off the head, and the body dies. Jiwoo spoke up from her station. Our analysis suggests the Krithix operate on a hive mind system. The queen coordinates everything. Individual warriors have some autonomy, but they rely on her for strategic direction. If we can eliminate her, the entire swarm will lose cohesion. But to reach her, we'd need to get through millions of warriors, Taeyang said. It's a suicide mission. Not if we're smart about it, Han Sol said. He pointed to the tactical display. The Krithix have never faced an attack like this before. They expect us to engage their fleet in space, wear ourselves down, and eventually retreat. But what if we don't? What if we punch straight through to the planet? They'd swarm us, Hyunwoo said. Every ship in the system would converge on our position. Exactly, Han Sol said with a grim smile. Which is why half our fleet will be a distraction. Captain Da-un, I need you to select your best Marines for a deep strike mission. We're going to drop you directly onto the planet, into the nest complex. Your objective is to reach the queen and eliminate her. Da-yun studied the display. The defenses around the nest are incredible. Anti-orbital weapons, atmospheric barriers, millions of warriors. Even with powered armor, we'd be overwhelmed in minutes. Which is why we'll be providing support, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Engineer Kyung-mi entering the bridge. She had been working non-stop for weeks, analyzing captured Krithix technology and adapting it for human use. She looked exhausted but excited. I've been studying their bioships, Kyung-mi said. Their organic nature makes them vulnerable to certain types of weapons. I've modified our EMP systems to disrupt their neural pathways. It won't destroy them, but it will disable them temporarily, long enough for a strike team to get through. How many ships can you modify? Han Sol asked. I already modified 50 of them, Kyung-mi said. Your flagship included. We can create a corridor through their defenses that will last maybe 10 minutes. That's your window. Taeyang shook his head. 10 minutes to reach the surface, penetrate the nest, find the queen, and eliminate her? It's impossible. It's our only chance, Han Sol said firmly. A prolonged battle will cost us the entire fleet, but a surgical strike might end this war in one day. He looked at Da-un. Can you do it? Da-un was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Give me 50 Marines. The best we have. People who won't hesitate, won't break, won't quit, and get us to that planet. We'll do the rest. Good, Han Sol said. He activated fleet-wide communications. All ships, this is Admiral Han Sol. Today we end this war. The Krithix have terrorized the galaxy for months. They've killed billions. They've destroyed worlds. But today we strike at their heart. Today we show them that predators can become prey. Prepare for final assault. We attack in 1 hour. The bridge erupted in activity. Officers relayed orders. Engineers prepared weapon systems, and pilots ran final checks on their fighters. Throughout the fleet, 50,000 crew members readied themselves for the most important battle of their lives. Da-yun assembled her strike team in the hangar bay. She had chosen carefully 50 Marines who had survived every battle since Kelran. Veterans who knew how to fight in impossible conditions. She stood before them in her powered armor, massive and imposing. Most people think this is a suicide mission, she said bluntly. They think we're going to die down there. Maybe they're right. The odds are terrible. The enemy is endless, and we're going to be operating deep in hostile territory with no way out except success. She paused, looking at each of them. But here's what I know. We're humans. We're Deathworlders. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day, and we didn't just survive, we thrived. We built civilization in the harshest environment in the known galaxy, and now they need us. Not because we're cruel or violent, but because we know how to fight when everything is against us. The Krithix are about to learn what Earth has known for millions of years. Survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about refusing to quit. It's about standing up one more time after being knocked down. It's about protecting what matters, no matter the cost. She raised her fist. Today we protect billions. Today we end the hive. Who's with me? 50 voices roared in response. The Marines checked their weapons, secured their armor, and loaded into the dropships. They were ready. On the bridge, Han Sol watched the clock count down. Kyungmi had deployed the modified EMP systems. The fleet was in position. Everything was ready. "Begin the attack," Hansol said. The Fourth Fleet surged forward. Half the ships broke left and right, engaging the Krithik swarms with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired continuously. Plasma cannons painted the void with fire. The Krithiks responded exactly as predicted, converging on the human fleet in massive numbers. While they were distracted, the other half of the fleet, led by the Indomitable, punched straight toward the planet. Kyungmi activated the modified EMP weapons, and a wave of disrupting energy swept across the Krithiks' bioships. They convulsed, their neural systems overloaded, and went dead in space. "Corridor is open," Kyungmi shouted. "But it won't last long. Their recovery time is faster than I calculated." "Launch the dropships," Hansol ordered. "Now." 10 dropships burst from the Indomitable's hangar bays and screamed toward the planet. They were small, fast, and heavily armored. Behind them, the Krithiks' fleet was already recovering, beginning to pursue. "Sir, enemy ships are closing fast," Hyunwoo reported. "They'll be in weapons range in 60 seconds. All ships, full defensive formation," Hansol said. "Protect those dropships at all costs." The human fleet formed a defensive sphere around the diving dropships. Krithiks' bioships slammed into them from all sides, but the humans held firm. Ships took terrible damage. Crews died, but the dropships kept falling, accelerating toward the planet's surface. Inside the lead dropship, Da-Yun felt the vibration of atmospheric entry. Around her, the 50 Marines sat in grim silence. They all knew what was waiting below. 30 seconds to impact, the pilot said. "Defensive batteries are targeting us. This is going to be rough." The dropship shook as energy weapons struck its shields. Alarms blared. But the pilot kept them on course, diving through the fire like a meteor. They hit the ground at terrifying speed, the landing systems barely slowing them enough to survive. The doors opened, and Da-Un led her team out into hell. They were in the middle of a vast organic landscape. The ground was made of chitinous plates that pulsed with organic light. Massive structures rose around them like diseased trees. And everywhere were Krithiks warriors. The swarm came at them like a wave. Thousands of warriors, maybe tens of thousands, converging on the landing site. "Into the nest," Da-Yun shouted. "Don't stop, don't engage unless necessary. Our objective is the Queen." The Marines formed a tight formation and pushed forward. Their powered armor made them stronger and faster than any Krithiks warrior, but the sheer numbers were overwhelming. They fought their way through the swarm, leaving a trail of alien bodies behind them. Jiwoo's voice came through their communications. She was still on the Indomitable, analyzing sensor data. "I'm tracking a massive biosignature 3 kilometers below your position. That has to be the Queen. There's a tunnel entrance 50 meters to your north." Da-Un led the team toward the tunnel. They lost 3 Marines in the first push, overwhelmed by the swarm. Then 2 more as they entered the tunnel, where the tight quarters made their armor less effective. The tunnel led down into the darkness. The walls pulsed with organic light, and the air was thick with biological waste. They could hear,